My name is Charlie Gilbert. I am sales manager and partner here at Gilbert Cellars. We're a family-owned and operated winery out of Yakima, Washington. Our family's been farming this area for over 100 years, since 1897, and we are at the Hackett Ranch property. This has been a property of ours since the 1920s, and this is where our winery is. Joining me is winemaker Justin Neufeld. He's going to show us the winery building right now.
Oh, okay. So this is our main production facility. It was built in 2014 just to accommodate. We had grown quite a bit. This building right here, you can't see all of it. It was the original. We'll wait for it to pass.
This is a fully functional,
Yeah, right.
fully operational area we have here.
So this is where all the fermentation happens, all the production during harvest. Some of the white wines we'll talk about a little bit. They're all fermented in these tanks. Basically, this place is emptied out during harvest and it's full of fermentation bins and a few barrel ferments that we do. So it's a great building. I love it. We have glycol cooling systems for everything. So, yeah.
Behind you right here is a Quonset hut. It used to be used for storage of, trailers and whatnot. Now is used for an event space. We will be heading down now to the, we'll showcase this. This is all lavender that you see in front of you. This is the top of our wine cave. So that's pretty cool. And we're gonna walk down through our amphitheater. This amphitheater has been around for about 10 years. We've hosted a music venue for the last 10 years called Music in the Vines. We get great indie bands from, Seattle and Portland that come through here. And it's just a really good time. So this summer would mark our 10th anniversary of Music in the Vines, but we'll see if that's going to happen. That's to be determined. To my right, you see more lavender along the wine cave here. Down below here, I'll stop right here. These lamps are all smudge pot lamps. These are actually basically used to be oil-based lanterns that were used to warm the crops back in the day before the time of wind machines. We've since repurposed these into lights for the winery. Here's the wine cave, and Justin's gonna take you through here and see if we don't lose any cell service.
So I love this barrel room. It has about 2 feet of dirt on top, and the lavender you saw up above actually serves a function. It helps cool the top of the building, so it probably helps the ambient temperature in this barrel room stay 10 degrees cooler than it normally would without the lavender. But inside we can fit about 500 barrels is my best guess in here. I have to do very little heating in the winter. We do have some cooling that we turn on during the hottest parts of the summer, but it's a great barrel room, mostly for the temperatures that it holds and the humidity that it just naturally has by being underground. So, yeah. And our barrels, our aging program goes anywhere from, 13 months up to 24 months for some wines, so.
Now Justin's gonna take you guys through a little bit of a virtual tasting of 3 of our, greatest hits. Starting off with our unoaked Chardonnay 2019 vintage.
So the Chardonnay and the Rosé were bottled on February 4th, so they were just bottled. Both these kind of have a similar strategy, what we're going for. So we pick them earlier. So I probably pick the Chardonnay, gosh, I don't even remember what it was this year, but it's typically anywhere from 21 to 22 bricks. And the goal there is we're just going for lower alcohols with nice natural acidity. So we want a dry, crisp wine with good acid and low alcohols. I've just found those styles of wines go really, really well with food. So that's kind of the goal. With the Chardonnay, we get it from our Horse Seven Hills vineyard called Chucker. It's in Horse Seven Hills, which is a pretty hot site, but where it's planted is kind of in a cooler draw. So we do have there's sort of a cool climate aspect to this Chardonnay. So it does have some fruit, but it's more like green apple rather than being tropical. And it has a little bit of like a nice minerality, if you will. I get a lot of floral character in it right now. Sometimes the finish is a little shocked up. There's actually a nice little sweetness up front. It is dry. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever call it sweet, but it helps give it some viscosity, a little bit of volume. So I'll do the rosé. Am I going at a good pace?
You're going at a great pace. We're
try not to lose it.
We're and don't hesitate to ask any questions. I can fire them off at Justin.
So I have found our rosé takes about 2 months, 3 months to really open up after bottling. Again, similar to the Chardonnay, we pick early. It's not saignéed. This one I think was 21 bricks when it came in. So low alcohol. I basically destem and press everything immediately except the last lot of fruit. That one I'll destem, crush into my press, and let it soak overnight. And that gives it the little bit of color that we're going for. But the inspiration with our rosé initially was Bandol. We wanted it to be Mourvèdre heavy. Mourvèdre typically is less, I described it as like fruity tooty. It has more herbaceous and peppery notes. We started blending in Grenache just because it brings in a really nice floral character, and I found the two together make a more interesting rosé. So I typically early on I get a lot of like citrus, grapefruit type character, and that maintains for about the first 3 or 4 months in our rosés, and then I found it transitions from that grapefruit into a nice peach. I get a lot of peach in our rosé around like July and August. So the wine does evolve quite a bit.
Next up is our 2016 Left Bank.
Yeah. I'm actually really proud of this wine. I think it's not I feel like everybody says, oh, this is the best vintage we've ever made of a wine, but I really do think this is the best vintage we've made of this wine to date. Gosh, 2016, what was that growing season like? I mean, it was a warm year. That's pretty safe to say. It was. We're back?
We're back.
Okay. I don't know where we left off.
Left Bank. We were talking Left Bank.
So this has got the base of it's always going to be Cabernet Sauvignon. It has the backbone that we want. It has Merlot blended in to kind of flesh out that Cabernet. Cabernet by itself can be sort of austere early on, and I found Merlot with the Cabernet just softens it, rounds it out, and gives it that fleshy character, if you will, that Merlot has. This one has a little bit of Malbec. I blended that in there because I'm a sucker for Malbec. I love Malbec. I'm a sucker for color is what I should say, and the Malbec just has this rich, beautiful color. And then the Petit Verdot, it has a crushed rock, stony character that kind of comes through in the aromatics, and it does have good acids, so that's why those are in there. But honestly, this is a great wine, I think, for the price. It over delivers. It's at a price point. It's not tank fermented. We ferment everything in small 1-ton lots. It's aged in barrel for 19 months. It's a well-made wine.
So I have a question for you.
Oh,
what is your biggest viticulture challenge in Yakima?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, there's all kinds of challenges. As far as pests go, I would say mildew is probably our biggest problem that we have. It's not a huge problem. It can be pretty well managed. For me personally, figuring out irrigation schedules, we have so many different soil profiles in our state, different drainage in those sites, and so really starting to understand your sites and what the water does and how it's taken up by the plant in the various sites is probably the hardest learning curve, if you will. But yeah, we irrigate everything because it's a pretty arid desert climate out here. So that's a good question. I don't know. Is there anything else we wanted to say?
Does anybody else have any questions for Justin while we have him hostage here?
I hope it's as beautiful in Chicago as it is here. I don't know what it's like there.
It's pretty beautiful over here.
It's been a while since I've drank wine at 9 in the morning.
Talk more soil, please.
Talk more soil. Oh gosh. So where these sites are, I'm just gonna assume you've all heard of the Missoula floods.
Geology, yeah.
These sites had a little bit of those soil deposits. The canyon that these are in, the water did back up into and deposit some soil. There's not much though, and they are steep slopes, so there weren't huge deposits. So it's a mixture of loess, volcanic rock, with excellent drainage.
It's snowing in Chicago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, I don't know. I like the snow. It'll get sunny. I'm sure it will. But yeah, I mean, Washington State, we have a lot of different soil profiles. So we have these silty loams that were deposited by the Missoula floods. Wahluke Slope, where the fruit for this wine comes from, were deposits from the Missoula floods, but it was this cool vortex of water that went around this giant corner of where the Columbia River drains now, and because it was fast moving water, none of those finer particulate matter like silt and loam could deposit. The only thing that could deposit there were bigger pieces of rock. So basically, Wahluke Slope is just this giant gravel bed deposited by the floods, and then wind-blown sand. So it has incredible drainage. So the watering schedules there are very different, because when you put that water in the ground, the plant takes it up immediately, but it also goes right out its leaves during the hotter part of the season. Whereas these siltier loams, you water it, those soils bind that water a little more tightly, and it doesn't go up into the plant as quickly. So it's just, you gotta manage it. You get a feel for it after a while.
Let's see the rocks.
Well,
These
here's some rocks, kind of an example. This is all stuff we put down for, but, so these rocks were out of the ground out here. Where we're at, I don't see any good examples of cleach. Where we're at, we're above the Missoula floodplains out here. So a lot of this is just, volcanic rock, ash. There's loess that's windblown. I've learned recently that some of the soils here are actually deposits from Mongolia, of all places. They would have these huge dust storms in Mongolia, and that wind would bring it over across the Pacific, and over millions and millions of years it's deposited here. I want to find a good example of cleach, but these are examples kind of the rocks that we do have. We have out here a layer of about a foot, maybe 2 feet of loess and rock, and then underneath that is a cleach layer. It's like hard pan, almost like concrete. And what happens is there's calcium in the soil, and you have these rocks above it, and that calcium evaporates up out of the soil and out into the air. And what happens is it comes up out of the soil, it starts to collect on the bottom of these rocks, and you get a calcification layer, and that's what we call cleach. I don't see any rocks with a good, sometimes you can find a rock that has an obvious layer, and And that's the bottom of the rock where that calcium starts to deposit. But I don't see any good examples here.
Awesome. Any other questions, you guys? Is the rosé made from a select row that's specifically for it? Can you show us a map? We don't have any maps out here.
We do farm it for rosé. I wouldn't say there's any select rows. I mean, we have our section in the vineyard. It's not a very big vineyard, so we can take quite a bit of the fruit. But the whole block is farmed for rosé because we use it all for that.
And Robin, hi Robin. Left Bank, Red, Bandol, Rosé. Why the French inspirations?
Well, that's mostly what we have are French clones in Washington State. I would say that's the French inspiration. And I mean, they've been doing it for thousands of years. So I feel like it's a good area to be inspired by. I would never say we make a Bandol Rosé because we're not Bandol. Like, we're Washington State. Like, to say I make a Left Bank Bordeaux styled wine is not accurate.
It's the left bank of the Columbia River.
It's the left bank of the Columbia River. But, we use these terms to help communicate to people sort of like what the concept is behind the wine. But ultimately, it's Washington fruit and Washington winemaking styles. It's a fair question. Sometimes I ask myself, like, why do we talk so much about French wines and wine regions? But they're sort of the benchmark. We learn what we can from them, and then we take that knowledge and we apply it with what we have here. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I think we're gonna just pan around and give you guys one last beautiful shot of our amphitheater, orchards. It's a gorgeous day out at the Hackett Ranch in Yakima, Washington. We hope to have you guys out here sometime in the future, but in the meantime, just stay safe out there. Cheers, guys.